Welcome to another episode of Viatorian Voices, where our conversations on the way give witness to the ministry and spirituality of walking with youth and those who go underserved. In this episode, we are observing National Vocations Awareness Week. Every year in early November, the Church dedicates this week to promoting vocations to religious life and priesthood through prayer, invitation, and education. For NVAW this year, Viatorian Vocation Ministry would like to focus on that third element. Over the past few months, our office has undertaken a wide-reaching research project to better understand the landscape of vocation ministry today, to report significant findings to Viatorians, and to identify key strategies and questions to direct our ministry most effectively going forward. We drew upon interviews with peers and colleagues, fresh data on religious life, articles from Catholic and secular news sources, and media online, including first-person reflections and videos, and other articles from peer congregations. Now that the project is complete, we're sharing our findings with the Viatorian community and our friends in every way we can, from community meetings reports to a printed booklet to community e-blasts, and now also including this conversation on the way. I'm Associate Dan Masterton, and I'm your host for this conversation with Brother Peter Lamech, CSV, our Director of Vocation Ministry. After you enjoy this episode, help us tell the Viatorian story by rating our podcast in your favorite app, sending this episode link to a friend, and praying for and encouraging young men considering Viatorian religious life. In this conversation, Brother Peter and I discuss some of the elements of the report and try to dig in a little deeper to help you learn, act, and pray for National Vocations Awareness Week and into the rest of our church life. Enjoy! Starting with some of this data from new entrants to religious life, we find that, for example, 93% of new entrants served in a liturgical ministry earlier in their lives, and 82% of people have been encouraged by someone to consider religious life. What did you find interesting in this data, or what do you think is really important to inform the way that we walk with young people and look for discerners?
This 93% of new entrants having an experience in liturgical ministry is something we've actually seen over the last decade consistently. New entrants into religious life, and this actually cuts across for both men and women, have had some sort of experience in serving in liturgies. I think their exposure to priests, to committed lay people, to also having this active participation in the church, where they see servants of the church being relatable and also from a young age are given opportunities to contribute. And I think over time this has enabled them to think about a life of serving the church.
And then the liturgical ministry has this inherently communal aspect to it where you end up working alongside other faithful people who have a similar interest and a similar desire to deepen their faith, understand what they're doing, and be active. And that alignment with peers who are like-minded and desiring similar things tends to have this upward draw on inquirers and discerners as well. So that's something else we noticed in vocation stories.
Yeah, so I think there is a clear invitation for us, those of us who are involved in vocation ministry and also connected to a number of apostolates, both in high schools and parishes, that involving youth and young people in liturgical ministry is not only important because it helps them become more invested in the church, but also we've seen the fruits of it, that people are contemplating a life of service to the church. And so for us, some immediate action is being on the lookout for young people to invite, and a really concrete invitation of, hey, would you be interested in learning more about participating in liturgical ministry for the masses at high school or on a regular basis in the parish?
So when we go another layer down past the data and we get into the stories that new entrants to religious life tell, we find interesting detail and some trends among what they share. And an interesting one is that a lot of people who enter religious life had seeds planted in their consciousness, in their lives of faith early on in childhood and teenage years into young adulthood. And then as those seeds were planted and grew, it was often the result of this diligent accompaniment they found from priests, brothers and sisters who are religious, deacons, committed lay people, pastoral ministers, and that process of accompaniment is what makes those early seeds grow. So what would you say about this process of planting a seed and then walking with someone in terms of how it helps with vocations and discerners?
Yeah, I think the seed planting occurs in a number of different ways. One of the things that's pretty clear when you review the data is that people who are entering into religious life have had multiple contexts of formation. They've had formative experiences as youth, formative experiences in high school, formative experiences in college and after college, experiences with, at times, professed religious brothers and sisters and priests, at times just very committed lay people who have given a witness to the gospel that's made the faith really attractive and wanted and kind of encourage them to take their own initiative in growing in their faith. So this idea of multiple contexts of formation is something that over time has provided people a foundation, and then also a variety of experiences that have continued to kind of enhance their own kind of theological reflection, their capacity to kind of understand their church, their place in it, and their own particular gifts and how they can contribute to the church.
And speaking of multiple contexts, something the data tells us is that only 31% of new entrants to religious life knew their congregation from the ministries that congregation sponsors before they encounter them as part of discernment. And so I think while it's natural for us to think of alumni of high schools sponsored by the Viatorians or parishes that the Viatorians administer, in actuality, the majority of new entrants come from beyond those areas. So what would you say about this process of planting seeds and walking with people that needs to stretch past our traditional communities?
Yeah, the church has operated in many ways in kind of silos where you have parishes and high schools that, you have a Catholic community, but it's not necessarily reaching out to the larger community, or after it's served a particular population, it isn't necessarily maintaining contact with those who have kind of moved on in life. So there's some invitations here for us to continue to find creative ways to maintain connections with young people who then become young adults, move on into the workforce. There's also kind of an invitation for us to be even more explicit about kind of who we are, what our mission is, and be able to find ways in order to kind of share with the wider public about who we are and invite them to kind of get to know us a little bit more deeply.
So as you keep going through vocation stories in the church, in the life of the church today, you see also that there's a really deep value to young people getting to see religious life lived authentically and in a compelling way. And so in some ways, yeah, that's a website or social media or podcasts, some of the things that young people could find online. But in a deeper sense, it's the importance of getting to see priests and brothers and sisters living their lives in community, sharing in prayer together. And often that means inviting young people into community homes in safe ways to join in prayer or meal or fellowship. So what do you think is important about presenting that witness to young people? And what do you think it does for their conception of themselves and what they're discerning about God's invitations for them?
It's really important to present the reality of the mission of religious life, and to especially in kind of an era where most young people in the church don't have direct experiences with religious brothers, sisters, and priests, that digital media can kind of function and operate in kind of a digital evangelization way, and in a even kind of a catechetical way, we're able to be able to teach young people about the critical kind of or core components of religious life, the prayer component, the ministry component, the community component. And I think the words and images that we use have to be really intentional so we can really effectively communicate what religious life is all about. And I think when these authentic images and words are used, I think they resonate in a unique way with people who are kind of exploring and wondering what they would like to do with their life.
So if you were putting together kind of an ideal, but certainly still an authentic image of religious life to share with a young person in an evening or a weekend, what are the things that you're trying to put before a young person that you really want them to see so that they can have a firsthand experience of religious life that can speak to them and can also show them what's possible if they were to enter formation and join the congregation?
I want the person to have an authentic experience of our fraternity. I want them to see how we relate to one another, how we all have a sense of humor. We are also very mission-driven people. We're also all unique. So on the one hand, like, to see the way we relate to one another are also our kind of ordinariness. We're ordinary men, but also we're a part of an extraordinary mission. And the other part is to really get involved in our mission in an authentic way alongside us, serving young people, serving those who are on the margins through direct service experiences, to see how we minister, how we interact with people, and to really see, in a way, our charism in action.
So then this kind of third theme that I found in these vocation stories that I thought was really compelling was that for a lot of newly professed priests, brothers and sisters, religious life was that deeper, fuller, greater thing that was elusive to them in some kind of a more traditional career or profession, that even if they started to make a good amount of money, if they started to gain status or titles, if they started to kind of gain some prestige in life, that kind of accomplishment wasn't satisfying them. And it's because when you hear these stories, read them, listen to them, they're people that are really strongly mission driven, and they're looking to belong to something that they can throw themselves into full on and really invest in and be a big part of. And for many of them, entering formation and then professing vows was that thing they could not figure out, but when they found it, they were fulfilled in a way that they never imagined could happen when they were in their previous career, profession, or job. What would you say about the kind of unique appeal of religious life and the way that formation and professing vows and then entering into this mission and community life can kind of unleash or unlock that area of a young person especially?
Religious life is a mission-driven life. You identify, I identify, my brothers identify as being these people who wake up every day and have this sense of purpose, this sense of meaning that drives them to help people. And what's also unique about it is you live with other people who also have this kind of drive within them to want to go out every day and minister to people, walk with people, help with people. And so not only in your active ministerial life, but when you come home at the end of the day, the sharing of stories, the kind of creative opportunities to envision how we can continue to develop ministries, develop programs, is something that's also very enriching. And I think it speaks to something, like you were saying, deep down, where those who are interested in religious life and feel this attraction to it are people who want that deeper sense of meaning, that sense of purpose in their life, where every facet of their life is significant. The time when they wake up in the morning and pray, the time where they walk with people and serve people and the actual corpus of the work that they do, and then who are they spending their time with? What are the values and priorities of those people? And how are those values and priorities connected with what's going on in the world and what's going on with kind of our core beliefs as Catholics? So I think the qualitative data also mirrors what vocation ministry has seen in the young men that we've talked to, where they're very academically gifted. They could go into a lot of different fields and be successful, but there's just something about serving the church and living the religious life that really is attractive to them.
So if young people are seeing or hearing or being influenced in a way that maybe steers them towards a lucrative or prestigious career or a particular type of accomplishment mindset, what are some things that young people could practice or prioritize kind of in the interim, maybe during college or during young adulthood, that might help ground them in the place where their mission-driven heart can live and thrive, and where their sense of belonging to a mission and serving others through a mission can really take root and grow in their hearts?
I think of a few things. I think time in prayer, time in active service, and intentionally building relationships with people who are of similar values and priorities, people who can walk with you and help you grow in faith. I think it's critical for people to take the time in prayer before the Lord to have those opportunities so Jesus can speak to them, so they can really take notice of what's going on inside them, what's going on inside their heart, where they can step away from the busyness of what they're doing and place themselves in God's presence and kind of open themselves to what the possibilities could be. The active service is impactful for a number of reasons. First, it's following the invitation from Jesus to put our faith into action, to be with people and help people, particularly through the corporal works of mercy. And it's also in those concrete experiences is where conversion is going to happen. Our eyes are going to be open to part of life that we may have never been exposed to before. And these concrete experiences are going to elicit new questions about who we are and how we want to live our lives.
So then kind of the last piece of advice or practical recommendations we find here to the Viatorian community, and really is kind of a healthy church life recommendation on the whole, is communities of faith have to think about both internal animation and external animation. And that means we need to look inward at those of us who are gathered together and share a mission and ministry, and think about how we're supporting each other and cultivating and sustaining rich lives of faith among ourselves. Then we also have to think about how that practice propels us outward to be doing outreach and going out to places where we're needed, where we can serve, where we can walk with people. So maybe let's take one piece at a time. In terms of the Viatorian community, how are we hoping that Viatorian associates, brothers, and priests can be more internally animated among ourselves? What can we be doing, or what should we be striving for to be a community that we can, authentically describe as being animated?
I think both the internal and beyond our own apostolates are rooted in the same source. And I think it goes to what Pope Francis was talking about in Apostolic Exhortation, Joy of the Gospel, that all of us as disciples need to move towards having an identity of being missionary disciples, people who have this sense of reaching out, even within our own community, to involve people in an authentic way in the life of the church. And so for us, within our own Viatorian apostolates, I think it's continuing to build on our great tradition of involving young people in the church and continuing to kind of find creative ways and very personal ways to step outside of our busy schedule. And we have so many things we have to get done for today, for tomorrow, and getting out of the office or getting out of the typical classroom setting and having a conversation with a young person, giving that direct invitation, hey, would you be interested in this? And then for the outreach kind of beyond Viatorian apostolates, I think it's finding ways to partner with other Catholic organizations, to have this kind of concrete outreach to other people and other churches and other organizations that are serving people, that are engaging with young adults and building relationships and finding opportunities where we can collaborate, work together in order to help people grow in faith and to meet people's real needs within the community in which we're serving. The critical pieces of animation is really continuing to cultivate a culture of invitation, a culture of accompaniment, and a culture of encouragement, where we actively are on the lookout for young people and are directly inviting them, in a personal way, and developing a personal relationship with them, and then helping them to develop their gifts, mentoring them. This is something that's, I think, always been a part of the Viatorian tradition of the way in which we mentor young people and the way in which we help them become leaders in the faith. And I think continuing to think about how they can utilize their gifts to help people in need, to contribute to the church and contribute to the world.
That's all for this episode of Viatorian Voices. We'd like to pray for all those men and women who are discerning God's invitation to religious or ordained life. May your discernment be grace-filled as you seek to identify God's invitations and live out your response. Viatorian Voices Conversations on the Way is a production of Viatorian Vocation Ministry. The Viatorians are professed brothers and priests, together with women and men lay associates, who proclaim Jesus Christ and his gospel and raise communities where faith is lived, deepened, and celebrated. In the footsteps of Venerable Louis Querbes and under the patronage of Saint Viator, we strive to do everything well so that through us Jesus may be adored and loved. This includes our Viatorian Vocation Ministry team. Vocation Ministry is directed by Brother Peter Lamech, and his Ministry of Outreach, Accompaniment, and Direction is supported by collaborators in our 3 regions in the U.S. Father John Eustace and Brother Rob Robertson are vocation promoters based in the Arlington Heights area. Brother Giovanni Orduz is a vocation promoter in the Bourbonnais-Kankakee area, and Father Dan Bellinger is a vocation promoter based in the Las Vegas area. As coordinator of pastoral ministries, I offer this team support with materials, resources, and coordination. Together, we strive to diligently and effectively raise vocations awareness, receive inquiries, accompany discerners, and support young men in many ways toward potentially entering religious formation. For questions to the team or to refer an inquirer or discerner, reach out by email at vocations@viatorians.com. To learn more about our community, visit viatorians.com or follow us on social media at Viatorian USA. Young adults seeking to connect with faith-filled peers can request to follow at Viatorian YA on the Way on Instagram, where our young adult community is building new pathways for walking together in faith. Those seeking support and accompaniment in exploring God's invitation for them are invited to reach out to Vocation Ministry. Send us a DM on social media or email us to start a conversation. Remember, you can help us tell the Viatorian story by rating our podcast in your favorite app, sending this episode link to a friend, and praying for and encouraging young men considering Viatorian religious life. On behalf of Brother Peter and the Viatorian community, I'm Associate Dan Masterton. Venerable Louis Querbes, inspire us. Saint Viator, pray for us. Adored and loved be Jesus.